Happy New Year. Happy New I can't believe it's the new year, 2024.
I
I'm
know.
having to get my head straight on that. And right off the top, want to apologize for last week. We recorded a session and pre-recorded it because we were traveling and had horrible signal at the time. And it wasn't able to go live on time. We had a little glitch. So we learned a little something. It did happen that day because we got a lot of comments from a lot of you on social media. But it didn't go live right at the top of the hour like usual, so we apologize for that. We try to be prompt, but you know what, we're learning, and then we're going to share those things with you as we learn.
Yeah, the simulcast and the live stream model doesn't always work together in quite the way that you expect it to. So you've got third-party apps that you're using, plus you're using Zoom, plus you've got recordings somewhere, and where you have those recordings matter. Like, so where you're streaming them from matters. So like all of that gets confusing. So luckily, Nazanin did a fantastic job of getting it out there later that day. And or at like an hour
And
later. It
not
wasn't
that
even that
much
much,
later.
not
Yeah,
that much
no.
later. And so we did get our message out to all of you and hope you've heard it.
And I did also, just for reference, I did do a simulive of one of my webinars to new potential customers, so not to you existing customers, but we've been having some experience with that, and that's been working. We had like, I think it was 80% of the people that signed up show up for that and stay through it. And so I'm learning more about that. And so that's a future topic I think that we can share with people, is
Yeah,
about how
yeah.
to do some of
Some
that.
more, some more of the streaming tools and things that we were working on. So we'll
Yep.
have some more of those exciting things coming up. It's a new year. We want to hit some things, hit the ground running. This is the year of marketing and promotion. That is kind of our theme for the year here internally, definitely in promotion. There's not enough promotion going on in the marketing industry. It's very disjointed. And so our goal is to consolidate some of the great information of what's actually working, because there's lots of advice out there, but that lots of advice is a lot of work. So let's do the stuff that's really going to work.
I like that. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
So that's my resolution for all of you this year, bringing you the things that actually work and get you measurable results.
Yeah. Measurable being the operative
Yeah.
word, right?
Right. Okay,
All
well,
right.
let's start our topic for today. Let's get going, because for those of you who are brand new to us live streaming here, we always record our podcast as a part of our coaching call. So we're on Zoom with our clients, and they're there and they can ask us any questions, and we'll answer them after. But we're here live streaming to you on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I don't think we're still on Twitter anymore, but anyway, definitely Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we're out there, we're live streaming to you, but we're also demoing how we use our coaching call to record our podcast. This is kind of a meta in the like not non-Facebook meta, but meta in how we're doing it. So
Hey everyone, welcome to Feed Your Band. I'm Tom Hazzard with my co-host and better half, Tracy Hazzard. Today, we're going to talk about maximizing your podcast reach, a great theme for 2024, the power of directory listings and promotion. So, this is really important. There are lists out there on the internet in pretty much every category of podcasting. Isn't that right, Tracy?
yeah, there is. I mean, there's lists for the best health and wellness podcast, the best fitness podcast, the best, it can be micro, it can be the best podcast on podcasting, right? There's lists out there for that. The top podcasts in this, they're best of top. But you want to go into the micro categories. It matters in the micro categories because that's what people are looking up. Because I don't want to know the best podcasts out there because that's too general. And then, the same five are going to show up every time, the ones that are all like paid for by big networks. So a real podcast listener doesn't do that. They go into the micro categories they're looking for.
So I want to help frame people's minds about this because I can already hear the skeptics, right? I can hear the doubt and skepticism among many of you listeners and or viewers, which is that, well, there's so many podcasts out there. How is mine gonna make one of these lists? And I was serious when I said there's a list out there for everything. And I'm going to give you sort of an analogy for this. that I think everyone can relate to, anyone who's watched television in the last, 20 years at least, okay? You always see, and you see it more because now so much is streaming, but especially when we were all in the theaters pre-COVID watching movies, right? On television, there are always these ads for the latest movie. And it always seems like every movie is the best, the greatest, this or that. There's always, now, so listen to this, the best movie of the year, the best film of the year, the best cinematic experience of the year. I mean, the writers who create these things come up with different ways for every movie to be the best of something, to get you to think it's the best and you need to go out to the theater to watch it. Well, there's similar things that happen with these lists and podcasts. It's not categories as one way, but I think there are many other lists out there of podcasts and opportunities to get yours listed. And the thing is, most people just don't ask, right, Tracy?
They don't. They really don't ask to be on the list. They don't ask to, update the list. They don't ask that. And their lists being made out there. Most of these lists are being made by publicists. I want to be really clear with like this. So if you really want to do this and you just really want help with this, go hire a publicist. That's the number one rule, because publicists know that this is a great way for you to get into circulation there. And it's an easy ask for them to do this, because a lot of times you write and submit it. That is a tactic, to write and submit your own. But you can't be on the list if you write and submit your own list. So you have to think that through. Who are you going to hire? Who's going to help you? Who's going to be the author that can write and put you on the list?
But isn't there another tactic about tapping into an existing list, Tracy?
That's my favorite one. And that's the one I really want to focus most on today, but I just want you to understand how the nuances of it work. So the idea is that somebody did go out there and write a list. And they may already be a blogger. And this is important to understand who wrote the list. If it's a list on somebody's website, if it's a list in a publication, two different author types. If you have someone who's a contributing author and contributes regularly to CIO magazine, for instance, and they contribute regularly and they happen to write a top podcast list, then definitely contact them. But if you can see it was kind of a one-time thing, they don't really have a lot of stuff, or everything that they do seems to be focused on the same set of clients, then you know that that's a publicist who's done that. So go check them out. Make sure you check out their bio. That's maybe the publicist you want to reach out to. That may be the one you want to hire, because obviously they use it in their strategy. So it's not going to work to get an update done on it if they're a publicist, because they do it for hire. But if it's a columnist or a contributor who already has a popular article, that's something different. And that's what I'm going to talk about here for most of what we're going to say today.
I like this tactic a lot. It's really pretty brilliant. It will take a little bit of legwork, but not that difficult for do-it-yourselfers, right?
Right. So let's say you type in best podcast on podcasting and a bunch of articles come up.
I
A
would
bunch
call
of lists
them
come up.
listicles,
Listicles.
sometimes they call them, right?
Yep, listicles, exactly that. Listicles come up. And you think, okay, ooh, that's a good publication. I want to be a part of TechCrunch, or I want to be a part of Entrepreneur, right? How can I get in that? So there's a popular article, but that's from 2022. It's 2 years old. And yet it's ranking on the first page of Google for best podcasts on podcasting. Sounds great, right? So we should reach out to that writer and say, hey, have you thought about updating this listicle? It's very popular. If you updated it for 2024, I bet you'd get even more lift from it. So you're giving them an option. If it's in their blog, it's easier. If it's in a publication, it's a little harder because they have to get the publication to agree. Right. So these are the two areas where you've got to think this through. Blogs are way easier for you to update. But if it's showing up at the first page of Google, it doesn't really matter if it's on somebody's website or it's on a main authority page, because its purpose isn't to add a logo to your website. Its purpose is to make an actual list for people who are out there searching for something, right? Searching for a new podcast. So we want to hit those lists, and we want to hit on the list. So if they come back to you and they say yes and say, oh, well, here, I have an update for you. I've done all the work. This is the part that you must do. You can't just pitch someone and say, update the list and add me to it. Instead, you go through the list, and let's say the list had 20 podcasts on it. I guarantee you that 50% of them will be gone 2 years later, right? This is 2022 to 2024. 2 years later, 50% of them will easily be gone. Could be even more, but 50% of them will be gone.
Either they're gone and no longer exist, or they stopped publishing a year ago or more. So they're no longer a current active podcast, right?
Right. And that's embarrassing to the writer. So this is a great inroad for you to make the introduction. So when you're writing that and asking them if they'd like to update, you should tell them how many have pod faded. So I noticed you have this great article. You rank on the first page of Google. Good for you. And you're obviously an expert in finance podcast and, in finance, and you've written this best of list on finance podcasts. But did you know that 10 of your 20 are outdated, no longer publishing, and some of them haven't even published an episode in 2 years? Would you like some assistance? I can give you 10 new podcasts if you'd be willing to include mine in your list as well.
You do the work for them, right?
Right. So then you let them respond back. Don't give them the list yet. You let them respond back, say, yeah, I'd love help with that. Then you give them formatted exactly like it already is in the article. So all they have to do is plug in the ones that are missing and say, this one's missing. I think you should include this one instead. This one's missing, or this one's pod faded, and you should include this one instead. And you give them the image, the cover art image, and the description, or whatever they included in the way that they listed it in their listicle. Sometimes it might just simply be a text link, the name of the show and a text link. Give them whatever it is that looks like their original article so they don't have to do any more work. And then, of course,
and paste.
Right. Copy and paste. And so you give them the ones that they're removing and you give them the new ones plus yours, right? And you give them some more details on yours, obviously, because you want them to be a little generous. Maybe they'll update their opening paragraph, because that's something that they should do. When you update it, you're going to mention somewhere, the writer should write that, where they're going to mention that this is now updated for 2024. And wow, thank you so-and-so for helping me with this list. And they give you another shout out. That would be really nice if they did that. They may not, but it doesn't matter, because you've already set up the success for them and given them, hand wrapped it, ready to go for them to really update this really quickly. That's an easy win for them. There's no reason for them not to. A blogger especially is looking for new content at all times. A columnist or a contributor also has sometimes a requirement of how many they're supposed to do per month. A columnist does. When I wrote for Inc. magazine, I had a requirement of hitting 6 articles per month. And that last week of the month was the week that I would be like desperately looking for some new things. So it's a strategy also to hit them in the last week of the month with an easy update to an fast article that they've written. So if you've got somebody and you're trying to do a publication, suggest that, because editors actually do love this. Who doesn't love a sequel? Right? It's kind of it worked the first time, so it should work again. Like, that's the mental model of all editors out there.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, updating it for 2024. I mean, they could, even if they wanted to. I mean, there's several different techniques about this, and you could edit the existing article because it's already ranking well, or you could create a new one that's for 2024, and it's republishing half that list, but the new list, and it links back to the old one, or maybe it just lists the 10 new ones and links back to the old one. I mean, there are many different techniques. There's not really only one way to do this, but you're going to breathe new life into it. And again, as Tracy suggested, help them out and make it easy for them to, produce more content.
All right. So let's talk about where you rank on that list. It is very obnoxious and presumptuous of you to suggest that you belong on number 1. You better have a really darn good reason for it, because I likely, as a writer, will go obnoxious, not including him. I probably still will rewrite that article, but I definitely won't include your show at that point. So you just gave me a great idea, but I'm like, I'm not listening to that ego. So writers have their own ego, right? They have their own authority level. They have their own mission. They're not there to serve you. So you need to give them something that makes it of value to them, make it easy for them. But if you want the law of reciprocity to kick in here, then don't be pushy about it. So what I suggest you do is say, hey, if you're trying to decide where to rank shows, here's the chart. You could show them an example of the chart. Here's where these shows rank, or here's where this show has 100 episodes and this one has 1,000. Like, so you could give it by episode numbers. You could give them some ideas about where you go based on something that's flattering and obviously a benefit to you. Our 3D print show, 650 episodes. I think we still have the longest and largest catalog, and we haven't published in 3 years. So you could always, there's always a way to spin it that puts you in a favorable position up towards the top, but it lets it be their decision where to place you. And I guarantee you, if you're like a lot of people, if you decided, okay, I'm not going to be obnoxious and I'm not going to be pushy, I'm not going to put myself at number one, you will put yourself lower on the list than the writer will. Because it's like, think about any self-evaluation you do out there. You always end up downgrading yourself more than your boss will. It just happens that way, always.
Best 3D printing podcast for binge listeners, that would be, right? Because you got 650 episodes.
Right. It has nothing to do with being current, right? So this is also a way to discover this. You can always spin it, right? Suggest a new title or an update to the title that favors you. And then when you give them the list, they decide where you go, but you've given them the data, like how many episodes each show has. That's really good and valuable information. So thinking about those things about how you want to position it, but also making it the writer feel like they're in control, because that's critically important to you actually getting more out of it. So now the flip side of that is, let's say you just don't want to give anyone else control. You're really the authority in the industry. So I was the authority on innovation. I wrote a column for Inc. magazine. I was the authority for innovation. I wrote an article for Inc. magazine on the best innovation podcasts. Well, I couldn't really plug my show. It would have been against the whole policy. I'm not allowed to plug my own business as a columnist writer. I'm not allowed to do it. I can have it in my byline. I can have it in the bio. I can mention it from an experience or a commentary about why I believe this, but I certainly couldn't put my show in the list. But that doesn't mean that's not more valuable. So if my bio says that I'm the host of Product Launch Hazards, at that time, that was the show I was the host of. I'm the host of Product Launch Hazard, and here's the 10 podcasts I listen to. That's something of great value. But you know what that did for me? Is it got me some amazing guests for my show. It got other people to plug my show and say thank you for having written this article about them. And I still get it cited because it ranks up at the top. My name's right there. So people are always searching me up. And that really helps my authority as an innovation podcaster, right? So it helps either way. But you have to be willing to relinquish your name out of that list. So if it's really important that you get your podcast on that numbered list, then this is not the way to go. You can definitely write about it in your opening paragraph. You can write about it in the close. You can be in the bio, but you cannot put yourself in that list. Little bit different strategy. I like it. It's a higher authority. I'm above the list.
Yeah, if you're the person setting the list and you have a podcast, they're going to figure that out and they're going to go listen to your podcast too.
Right. They're making me the list authority, right? That's a different position. So it's a decision on how you want to do it. It's a lot more work to do this because honestly, picking those shows is hard. Sometimes it would take me 2 weeks to pull a list of 10 because I wanted to listen to them, wanted to make sure they were really good, I wanted to make a personal comment about why they were good, why they were worth listening to. That was my addition to it. There's lots of listicles out there that don't work that hard, that just take the description, which if your description is weak, is going to hurt you. Make sure the first couple of sentences of your description isn't about you. It's about why someone should listen to your podcast. It's going to make any opportunity that you might have to be in one of these listicles more valuable. It's going to make it easy for them to copy and paste and include you. Because I can tell you that there were lots of shows that might have been good, but when I read their short paragraph description, I was like, forget it. They're all about themselves. They're just too much ego for me to include. And I just skipped them before I ever even gave them a listener chance. And if I would do that as a podcast list builder and a writer, you can imagine that a listener is not going to give you the time of day either.
That's so true, Tracy. That's, you know what, boy, big red flag needs to go up right here. This is a real important point to emphasize in this whole discussion about lists and getting your show out there and to be found. You've You're so right, Tracy. It's so simple. So many podcasts, and it is really sort of I would say the lazy podcasters or podcast producers path to creating a new show listing is making it all about the host. And if you, not that, it's not important, the host is important, and people are going to listen to the host and hopefully like the host and want to keep listening to them. But if you make it all about the host and not what's in it for the listener, you got to lead with what's in it for the listener. And
And
then the
that's
value
what
for the
these
host will
articles
come.
are, right?
Yeah.
That's what these articles are. I'm a listener and I'm out there looking for the best podcast in whatever category, right? I'm out there looking for something new. This is so critically important. So if you haven't been listed before, this is a great time for you to go out there and check out if there are any lists. There might not be in your micro category. That's interesting. If there isn't one, maybe consider being the author. And if there is a bunch of them, go pick the best blog, the best publication. Try both those models, try one of each, see how it works. Get them to update their lists for 2024. Get them to update it for the new year and see how much business that drives to you. I can tell you that I know from that top 10 list I created on Innovation Podcast, I still today get those podcast hosts reaching out to me telling me they're getting not only listeners, but business because of that article. And I think I wrote it 4 years ago, 5. It might even be 5, easily. Yeah.
Well, no, and honestly, that's the thing. That's the power of these lists and blogs, not to get too far off topic here, but that's the power, the long-term power of these lists and of blogs that you create either for your podcast episodes or about podcasts in general. We have one that's almost 6 years old now, that we're the very top result on the first page of Google for a very valuable search term that we still get traffic from every month, and just hasn't changed in all those years. So, and I don't even think that blog or episode has been updated anytime recently, but updating is a good way to really turn the odds more in your favor.
Right. And the reality is that this is going to lead to directory listings like in all kinds of places and other types of promotion, because that helps with that reach that's going on everything, because people are looking for the easy answer. So this is also something AI loves lists. It makes it easy for it to do its job. So when it's out there searching and it sees these popular listicle articles, it's easy for them to compile that, find the overlap, which is why getting on more than one list is a good idea. Find the overlap, pulling it together, and then making the suggestion. And it does away with all the writers to begin with, yes. But it was from that the information about your show shows up. So we definitely need to be a part of this written word. It's required in our AI future. So I want you to think about that as well. This is going to be one of the big power moves in marketing and promoting, and that's why we're starting the year with this one.
And just a little side tip about this, you realize when your show is mentioned in a listicle somewhere, or you write an article yourself and contribute it somewhere else, guess what? That's going to link back to you, wherever you are, to your show, to your website, to your press or media page. This is sort of how you build that sort of spider web of cross links and backlinks, which are going to provide you value long term.
Exactly. So you can use it for a long time. You made a top list at some point in the history of it. Doesn't really matter. You can always use it for a really long time. Drop the year off, obviously. Usually most articles will drop the year off. It might be in the subtitle or it might be in the opening paragraph, but they usually don't keep them in the title anymore because they know it has longevity when it builds up on the first page of Google. It's kind of a tactic that it'll say the best podcasts for such and such, but not the best podcasts of 2024 for such and such. Like, it's very rare that does that in the main title. Subtitles all the time, they're in there. Or it might say dash updated for 2024 if it was a previous list that was from 2018 or 2019.
You're making me realize, Tracy, although I may not want to mess with it because it's still so strong SEO wise today, but that episode we did Feed Your Brand 6 years ago was the best and worst podcast websites at the time. And we didn't say for 2017 when we did it. But there have been some changes and some updates that might be worth refreshing, or doing an updated new one that refers to that one, or that the old one refers to the new one when people find it through Google because they're going there first. And I have to think about that.
Yeah, so this is something, if you're going to do updates and you're not a blogger and you don't understand SEO on your website, don't mess with the titles that you already have. It's not a good idea. If you do a new episode, do something new, just create a new one, see if it supplants the old one. It's not a good idea to go back and update old ones without knowing what you're doing from an SEO standpoint. So I'm just going to say that right out there. In a publication situation, they totally know what they're doing. So publications know how to update past articles. And so they know how to do that properly and make sure that they're getting all of the original SEO value and then adding new to it.
Great tips. I think this is a great one to talk about here in early 2024, as we're all planning for how to get more out of our show.
That's right. And as always, we're going to be back next week with another topic. We are always looking for new ideas. We want to make sure that we're giving you the most value you can. We are focused mainly on people who've already started a podcast, but if you haven't started one yet, we hope we're able to support you as well with some ideas about what you might want to do when you get started. But there are all kinds of tools and useful ideas, tips, courses, programs, more podcast episodes than you can possibly listen to, I think, in one weekend, that's for sure. All of it is now on podcastersunited.org. That's where we decided to donate our shows to. So we donated the Binge Factor and Feature Brand and our entire tip library to a nonprofit organization called Podcasters United, because we think that's where most podcasters can get the most value from it. And so that's where we'll be. So if you're looking for the blogs for this episode, you can still go to featurebrand.co, or you can go to podetize.com/featurebrand. It'll forward into podcastersunited.org. But that's where it's located now. And you have lots of new things. We've got new AI newsletter we're playing with over there, some new fun things for you to try out in Podcasters United. So go have some fun over there.
All right, let's have that be the end of that episode. And hey, to those of you watching us live on social media, if you're a Podetize customer, you'd be with us on Zoom, and you could now be a part of the discussion and ask some questions. So check that out. Learn how you can become part of our community at podetize.com.
And make sure to friend us on social. You know, not just you may have caught this live stream without following us, but if you follow us, we always have an announcement about the next live stream that's coming up. So you'll see the topics, so you can decide whether or not you want to join us next week as well.